Hey, I'm Laura. We're back with Jennifer Dean, and we were just talking about females and how younger performers can come up and start their own projects. So for women in general and female filmmakers, do you think it's helpful that we not come at it as a competitive stance, that we collaborate together and really help each other out so that we can further our movement in this industry?
I think that's changing a lot, actually. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was certainly an issue with a lot of the women that I interviewed who were making films in the 1980s, 1990s. Is just this idea that there are only so many jobs allocated for women. So you can't support other women because they could end up taking your job. And I think that's really changing a lot. I know that I'm currently in an MFA program at CCNY in production, and a good, I'd say half of our class are female, and we're all very supportive of one another. I'm following one of the women that I interviewed. I'm following her making her first feature film.
Who is it?
Lauren Tracy.
Lauren Tracy.
And her feature is Sweet Desert Palm, which you can find on the internet. And she has a female producer on board, and she's great at networking. And really, that's so incredibly important. And I think women are much more supportive of each other than they ever have been. And another woman that I interviewed gave a great quote, Abigail, and it's in the video clip that I did for her that you can find on my website. And she basically says, we have to learn as women that not to pull the ladder from under each other. Like, more women getting jobs doesn't mean that you're going to lose out on that job. It just means that there will be more women who will bring each other up. And I think it's so incredibly important.
Especially for young
Especially for young women
into this industry.
Exactly, because I think a lot of young men too are extremely supportive of young women. I know that in my experience at my MFA program, I actually had a professor teaching directing in New York City, and he said that directing is a masculine role, and I was furious and sort of just incredibly exasperated by it. And some of the most supportive responses and the most appalled sort of answers came from the men in the class who were just like, that's simply not true. I mean, you have to have feminine as well as masculine qualities in order to make a good movie. And
right.
It's not all about, and to sort of explain away, I mean, it was his way of sort of saying, okay, this is not something that I have to address because you say that this is feminine, mm-hmm. but there's nothing feminine about making a movie. Making a movie is masculine, and which is absurd. I mean, it's ridiculous on many levels.
So even though we read these statistics about last year and how few female filmmakers there are, still knowing that the next generation that's going to be making those big films maybe in the 2020s, it's going to be different, and being positive about that.
Yeah, it's certainly being positive about it, and the idea that things change slowly, and unfortunately things change very slowly, but there's so much in the news now about the fact that there are so few women out there being represented. But there are a ton of female filmmakers now. It's not like it was in the 1950s or 1960s where you had women who didn't even think about directing. Like, you have so many women graduating from film schools, you have women who are producers and heads of studios, and it's a matter of sort of changing the way we think about women being viable as filmmakers in order to make a return on your investment, essentially. That's the big thing in Hollywood, at least, and in the independent world, just sort of realizing that there are different stories to be told. And there's new ways of doing that. Ava DuVernay, who's a filmmaker who just did Middle of Nowhere last year. She has her own distribution company to try and work on getting African American films out to a larger public, and Firm is the name of that company.
And even some actors, female actors, Sandra Bullock, correct? She started her own production company, and it's just this whole wave of
Jennifer
towards it.
has her own company as well. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Wow, that was really interesting, and we're going to talk a little bit more about your documentary in the next segment.
Great.